Welcome to Losing a Child, Always Andy's Mom. On this podcast, we journey through the devastating experience of the death of a child. Grief is seldom discussed openly in our culture, and the death of a child makes people feel even more uncomfortable. We approach the topic openly and honestly, speaking to people who have lost loved ones and experts who help care for them. Whether you are a parent experiencing loss or someone who wants to support another going through this tragedy, this podcast strives to offer hope and help.
Wonderful little memories and gifts that they had. So we're going to do that. You can come in through Facebook, Instagram, or YouTube. I think I'm going to have the Instagram working properly this time. And then the other really exciting part of this is I know that you've heard in the last few weeks that we have a new member of the Always Andy's Mom team. We have Lauren, who is helping us do our social media. So Lauren's going to do a little special project with all of this. And so these pictures and stories that you send to me, I'm going to forward on to her. And she is going to use those pictures to make a cool little video to put out on social media, on our YouTube channel, on Facebook, and on Instagram. So I know we talked about this last week. I'm just going to invite you to do it again, just in case you didn't listen last week. So in case you didn't listen, yes, give me a memory. Write to me at marcy@andysmom.com. And we are going to use those in the live stream. We're going to use those for social media clips. I think it's really just going to be cool to help us create a new memory together, like as Always Andy's Mom community. I am also super excited to report that I have a sponsor for this week's episodes. So we haven't had a sponsor for a little while, but we have a sponsor. And again, it is Michael's Madre. And I am so thankful for her to do that again, because if you remember, Mary Beth was the reason that these sponsorships started in the first place. It was her who asked, how much does an episode cost? And I gave her that number and she donated $125, and that's what we've been doing ever since. So this is a special week in their family, in that it is the 2-year anniversary of Michael's death. So in honor of that anniversary, she wanted to sponsor another episode. So that anniversary is December 12th, and this is being released on December 11th. So we remember Michael with you, Mary Beth, and thank you so much for your contribution. Right now, though, I really just want you to sit back and digest all of this wonderful information from Melissa, Drew's mama. Thank you so much, Melissa, for coming on the Always Andy's Mom podcast today.
Thank you so much for letting me be a part of your show today. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this because I think we're going to have a nice conversation. So as this airs, this is in December. And I know when I got some information about you, your team had talked about how you wanted to talk about kind of the holidays and what it's like to be grieving in the holidays. So I think this is going to be really nice timing for that. But I do want to start out by having you just tell us about your son, Drew.
Oh, thank you so much. I always love this question. He was remarkable. He was full of life, never slowed down from the moment he was in my womb. He was one of those babies that flipped around and kicked all the time and, really let me know he was on his way.
Yeah.
When he was born, he just very special, we spent a lot of time I would rock him a lot. He liked to be in motion. He didn't like to just sit still. So I would be up and I would walk with him. And then as he got to be a toddler, the minute he could walk, it was like we were off to the races. He just went everywhere, loved to climb trees and fences. And, just he had a fearless kind of quality to his little spirit. But Drew was a remarkably adventurous, deeply loving, sweet and kind 4.5-year-old little boy that still is, the light of my life. I just absolutely love him. You can see he's just featured right back there.
Yeah, he's right behind you in the pictures.
Right behind me. Yeah.
I love that.
That actually was taken the day before the accident. I was with him in his preschool. And we were painting garden markers for gardens. We were planting little pots with beans,
Uh-huh.
and these were little garden markers that we were making to go in our little pots for his classroom. And it's one of my most treasured photos. And I love that it's always just right behind me whenever I'm doing any of this work.
Mm-hmm.
He's always with me.
I love that too. I love that too. Those pictures right before are really precious. I took one of Andy in our kitchen the day before he died too, and I just always remember that.
Yeah.
So I have another question for you. Is it Drew or was it Andrew?
It Drew. Just Drew.
It was Drew. Okay.
It Drew. Yeah.
I just wondered, obviously, because my Andy was Andrew, but we shortened it to Andy, and as oftentimes people do.
Yeah.
And was he your first, or
Yeah.
he was your first?
So he was my first son. When I married my husband at the time, he had 2 boys, Jordan and Mark. So I had the great honor of being their mom before I had my own children.
Uh-huh.
So Joey and Drew is our first child together. Yes, Drew, and then Devin was born very soon after Drew, within 15 months. So I was a busy mom.
Yeah, you were a busy mom.
Yeah, very busy mom.
The way you talked about how you rocked him all the time and held him, I thought, oh, I bet he was the first.
Yeah. Yeah. All of my babies I rocked and I held, but Drew in particular, he did not like to be still. I could take him in the car and just the motion of the car, he'd go right to sleep. The minute I stopped the engine, he would wake up. He would ship that kid. So there were many times we'd be driving around just to get him to sleep, and then hoping he would stay asleep long enough for us to put him in his crib. But more often than not, he ended up sleeping right next to me because he just didn't like to not be with us or with me. So either constant motion or constant kind of connection. We always were together.
So how was he as a big brother?
A bit mischievous, I'm not going to lie.
Yeah.
He was not always the kindest of the big brothers. He would steal Devin's toys. And when Devin dared, to try to take it back, Drew, he might give him a bite. And then Devin would run to me, Mommy, Drew bit me. So Drew had a way of just making his presence known, and he had a will. Like, he really had a strong will. So whether it be over a toy or, following the rules, if Drew didn't like something, he had no problem objecting.
Oh my. Well, he sounds like a fun kid though.
He was. Yeah. And what I love right now is that I'm always like tempted to say he is, he wasn't but his energy and the way I still experience his presence is very much the same way. It's very much alive. It's very vibrant. And whenever I just feel into Drew and the love that still remains between us, that's how I experience him. It's a very vibrant, very joyful kind of curiosity that I lean into whenever I think about him.
Oh, that's beautiful. Well, do you want to talk now a bit about the accident and what happened?
Sure.
Yeah.
It was the morning of May 19th in the year 2000. I was married. My husband at the time, very ambitious dentist. We had several dental practices here in the state of Arizona. On this particular Friday morning, he was at one of our practices up in the Phoenix area, which is about a 3-hour drive from where our home is.
Mm-hmm.
And Drew, true to form, was up at about 5 o'clock in the morning, and he came into the room, and I just remember this so vividly. He said, Mama, the sun is up in the sky, which was the rule. Drew could not get out of bed and wake me up until the sun was already in the sky. But in Arizona, sometimes the sun is up in the sky pretty early. So at 5 in the morning, he comes in, says, Mama, the sun's up. Can you please get up and make me breakfast? And I said, absolutely. So even though I was very tired, my younger son, Devin, had asthma as an infant. And I did not want to take 2 little boys to an emergency room. So I'd been up the whole night giving Devin breathing treatments. And Drew, oblivious to all of that, was just ready to start the day.
Sure, of course.
So got up, got him, he wanted Rocky Road ice cream for breakfast. We said no to that. So then he was like, okay, well, I want beef raviolis. He had a very odd palate. Like, he did not like traditional breakfast food. He liked breakfast food for dinner, but he liked dinner food for breakfast. It was kind of flipped. So he wanted beef raviolis. And at this point, because I'm tired and it's 5:00 in the morning, I'm like, okay, beef raviolis it is. The breakfast of champions.
You know what? I'm telling you, I'm a pediatrician. I do not, the breakfast food idea is just silly, right? I had one in yesterday because we need to get her to eat. We need to get her to gain weight. And the mom goes, I don't know. She just won't eat breakfast. Today I gave her salami and mozzarella sticks. I said, great. Yeah. Salami and mozzarella sticks. You've got protein. We're cool. I like that better than cereal. So anyway, so do not feel bad about the beef ravioli. I love it.
Okay. So beef raviolis it was, and he loved Thomas the Tank Engine, those videos. So he asked to watch Thomas. So I put on his video and I gave him some crayons and some paper with his breakfast. And I said, sweetheart, I am going to go check on Devin. I'll be right back.
Yeah.
And I went back to check on Devin, who was struggling to breathe. And he wasn't awake, but he wasn't like in a deep sleep. So I just kind of laid on my side and was patting his back just to kind of comfort him, to keep him calm and comfortable. And I inadvertently had fallen asleep.
Yeah.
And when I woke up, it must have been maybe an hour and a half later. It was still before 8:00. I do know that. I woke up in this weird panic. I immediately sensed that I needed to find Drew. The house was quiet, and when Drew was in the house, I promise you, it was just not quiet. He just wasn't that kid. He made a lot of noise. He laughed out loud at the videos, or he would talk to the videos. And so I always could, I always knew where he was because I could hear him in the house.
Right.
So when I woke up and it was silent, I knew that I needed to immediately find him. And as I went back towards the kitchen, he wasn't where I left him. And so I'm calling out for him and he's not responding. And now I'm starting to really start to feel that panic. Like, oh my gosh, where's my little one? And as I'm looking under beds, behind curtains, in closets, because he loved to play hide and go seek, I thought maybe he was playing.
Sure.
As it started to dawn on me that he's not playing, he's not in the house, I ran back towards the bedroom to check on Devin again, who's finally sleeping. And on my way back to come look for Drew again, I noticed that the back door, sliding glass door, was open ever so slightly, just ever so slightly. And I didn't catch it initially. So I thought, okay, he's outside.
Yeah.
Wonderful. He's outside playing. So I'm outside, I'm calling for him. He's not answering. And now I'm really starting to feel that deep panic, like there's a problem. And then I look towards the direction of where I hear my dogs, and they're like running toward the house. And I live in the middle of farmland, so there's acres and acres of open fields, and I see my dogs running toward me. And that's when it dawned on me, oh my God, the irrigation canal. And I looked at the ground because we have some areas where there's some dirt, and I saw Drew's footprints leading toward that irrigation canal. And I ran as fast as I could to the edge of this canal where you could see there had been some kind of like the dirt above the irrigation canal. And if you're not familiar with agricultural areas, we have these very large open irrigation systems that can have like a road above it, and it can be like compacted dirt, and then there'll be some cement, and that's where the water comes through the irrigation canal. But you could see that the dirt above the canal had given way where he must have been. And then you could see the splash on the cement portion of the canal. And I dropped to my knees and started to just beg God to please let my son be okay.
Yeah.
And it was probably within a few minutes of me being on my knees, just kind of crying out for Drew, and just collapsed on the side of this canal bank, that a gentleman drove by, and I explained the situation. I asked him to please call the authorities. I explained I had a little one still at home. I showed him where I lived. There's only a few houses, so I could just point. And he's like, okay, I will call the authorities and have them meet you at your home. I said, thank you. I went home. Devin was still asleep. And then within minutes, I had the fire department, the police department, the sheriff's department, an FBI search and rescue team, people that knew me in this community, friends and family, everyone is showing up. And my husband is away. So we called him to tell him that Drew was missing. And it was going to take him about 3 hours to get home. So in the time that it took for Joey to get home, he still hadn't been found. And it was maybe 7 hours after that initial phone call, that interaction with the gentleman on the side of the canal bank, that my dad came into my home and sat next to me and told me that they had found Drew and that he was gone. And quite honestly, that is when my whole world was divided into this before and after the accident.
Yeah.
It was a chasm where nothing would ever be the same again.
Right. Yeah.
And it hasn't been the same. But thankfully, my journey has evolved, and where I was on day one is not where I am today, and why I'm so passionate about talking about grief and bereavement and the journey I believe one can have with grief, and that grief can become a really wonderful teacher if we can allow ourselves to sit with the lessons that grief has to share with us. I think one of the most profound lessons that I have learned from my experience of losing Drew at such a young age, and I was only 29 when he passed, so I was still young myself. It's that no matter what separates us from our loved one, there are things that will always remain. And the beauty of the memories that I shared with Drew, and this acute awareness that the love that I have for Drew has never left. It has never stopped. It's never ceased. It's never ebbed or flowed. It has been a constant. And that is what I choose to focus on in my journey with grief. It's that I honor what remains, not focusing solely on what is not with his physical presence is not with me, but his presence is with me.
Mm-hmm.
And I focus on the love that we continue to share. And it has been by far and away one of the greatest lessons that grief has taught me is that there is no true separation. It's just the illusion. Love is and always will remain. It's just, how do we attune to it? How do we hold it? How do we expand that awareness and that knowledge? Because that's where I have found some of the most healing connection and restorative kind of lessons have been found when I've sat with my grief and learned from it.
Oh, that's beautiful. You talked about how this has been 25 years. So I want to remind listeners that this has been 25 years for Melissa. This is not how you felt at the beginning. And you said it's been a transformation. Can you talk about that transformation? Because so many of my listeners are so fesh. So I'd just like you to talk about how long that journey takes, because it's long.
It is. And I think of grief more as a dance, not a journey. I think with, grief ebbs and it flows, and there's a rhythm to it that initially we don't know. We don't know this rhythm. We don't understand the cadence of this new way of being inside of a world that looks the same, that is familiar, but yet completely unrecognizable at the same time, because I am different. I am forever changed. I will never be that woman that I was on May 19th, 2000. But that doesn't mean that the woman that I am today isn't still amazing and the journey meaningful, because it has been. But in the beginning, I suffered with a lot of blame. I blamed myself for having fallen asleep. I really struggled to feel worthy of being a mother to Devin after this accident. I was terrified that I would make another kind of misstep. I never intended to fall asleep that morning, but I had to start my journey with grief with learning to have grace for myself and for that morning and what happened that morning, because the grief will sometimes whisper to us, or at least it did to me, all of my worst fears, that this was my fault, that I was somehow a bad mother, that somehow if it weren't for me, that he would still be alive, and all of the people that were suffering over his loss, that everyone would be okay. I felt responsible for not only his death, but for the suffering of everyone around me that loved him. And so for the longest time, I didn't think that I should be able to feel anything but this devastation. And it took time for me to begin to understand that what I was experiencing was more normal than abnormal, that there oftentimes it's a very common thing to feel a sense of responsibility for circumstances that we can never control.
Mm-hmm.
And as those things became more evident and I started to reach out to other parents who had lost children, that's when I finally started to receive knowledge and information from parents who had traversed this same kind of path toward living life without their child physically with them anymore. I asked a lot of questions, and they were basic, like how do you do this?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what to do. I don't know how to be be with at home. I feel completely dislodged from this life that is so familiar. I don't recognize myself anymore. I don't know how to be the kind of mother that I wanted to be. So many people that just would take me aside and they would put their arms around me and they would just hold that space.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that they had all these magical words at first. It's just their presence let me know that I did have community and that I did have a place where I could say all of the scary parts out loud. Like, was this my fault? Did I screw this up? Am I never going to be able to forgive myself? Like all of those big questions. And some of the most compassionate answers that I received really did change the trajectory of my healing journey. One was a conversation and the other was a letter. And I'll begin with the conversation. This particular mom had lost her son to leukemia in his early 20s. And she said that on the hard days, she reminded herself of what an honor it is to carry this grief, because what it meant and what it represented was the depth and the specialness of the relationship that she had with her son.
Mm-hmm.
And that if grief could be the mirror reflection of the love that I was still experiencing, then for whatever reason that helped shift grief from being this horrible, awful thing that I had to avoid at all costs. And I could sit with it because there was truth in that. There was truth in this pain being the mirror reflection of the love that I still longed for, that relationship that I still longed for. Back then, I didn't understand that it still remained. I saw it as separate and gone, but thankfully, over time, I came to understand that his love and his presence are still with me. I just have to reach for them differently.
Mm-hmm.
My heart has to open and align in a different way because I am reaching to hold on to a love that will always be. And that was deeply healing and helpful.
Yeah.
And then there was a letter from a mother who I've never met. I've never had a conversation with her. She heard of my story and she wrote me the most beautiful letter. And it came on a night when I truly was struggling with grief and not really sure I wanted to live anymore. This pain was so immense and I felt so responsible for everything that had happened. At this point, my marriage is really suffering. We're separated. This is a month after Drew's passing. Joey made the decision to live elsewhere because his grief and my grief we weren't grieving together and we were doing more harm than good. And this letter came on that very first night where Devin was staying the night with Joey at his new home. And I remember being in a very dark place and walking out to the living room and sitting down with a bottle of vodka and the pills that were prescribed by very well-meaning professionals to help me sleep and help me cope. And I was ready to just say, I can't do this. I cannot live with this pain. I cannot live with this guilt. I feel so unworthy of remaining here. And also I was terrified that I would screw up and something would happen to Devin. And that was the last thing I wanted. I didn't want to inadvertently harm my son, Devin. So there was this, amidst all of these like Hallmark cards, colorful envelopes, there was one plain white business envelope that said to the mother of Drew Gallimore. That's all it said. And so I grabbed this kind of, it looked like an out of place envelope, and I opened it, and it was from Teresa, and she had told me that she had heard about my son's passing through friends, and she wanted to reach out to encourage me on the hard days. She explained she had lost her daughter who was struck by a car as she was waiting to be taken to school. Teresa, the mother, had forgotten something in the house, ran in to grab it. And in the space of that time, her daughter ended up running into the road for whatever reason and was struck by a car that was passing by. And she talked to me about how she assumed that I would be feeling this tremendous amount of guilt and that I would be struggling. And she said, I want to encourage you that on the bad days to remember that the love still remains and that hope and happiness and joy are yours, but you will have to find them. You will have to choose to look for them in life. And she just she spoke honestly about the challenges of feeling like you make progress and then you lose ground. And that somehow throughout that whole, ebb and flow of this dance with grief, that I would discover beautiful people that also understood this way of living, where you live kind of in this reality of there's a part of your past that you long for and you wish was a part of your presence, but then you're also living in the moment, honoring their love, bringing them forward, because that's really the only pathway that we have. We have to go forward, not leave behind, not forget, not stay stuck in the past, but how do we honor this love and this relationship that was so special by bringing it forward in a meaningful way that still allows me to grow alongside my grief. And that's where things really started to kind of culminate for me, was that discovery of these things can all be held at the same time. There can be grief and there can be this desire to move forward. There can be a love and a mourning of a relationship and still this beautiful presence of the love that I still do share with Drew. It was learning to bridge those two very opposing kind of viewpoints or thoughts and blend them into a new way of being in the world. And that's where I found that that's how I started to really, truly move forward. I know that's a long answer, but that's how it was for me.
No, I can really resonate with that. I feel like I'm hearing you talk about too, the importance of meeting those women, whether you met them in person or just via a letter, but having a little bit of hope that maybe it can be better. I mean, I remember thinking, I went to a support group very, very early. It was only 3 weeks after Andy died, and we went to our first support group. And I remember one woman, we're still very, very good friends today, Stephanie. I talk about her on the podcast. She was almost exactly a year ahead of me, 13 months ahead of me. And every time I would go through something, I'd think, well, Stephanie did this, so maybe I can too.
Yeah.
Right? It wasn't a given, because I still really couldn't believe truly that I was going to live through this, because it felt like I can't survive this. I remember thinking that again and again and saying to friends, like, I can't do this. Like, I just can't do this. But then I would think of Stephanie and I'd think, well, she did. So maybe, just maybe that means I can too. And it gets you going one more day or one more week or one more month. And I feel like those are the kinds of things that help you to be able to not just stay in that dark space, right? Just a minute at a time.
Absolutely. I think what I have come to understand is the importance of being able to have grace and extend grace to myself.
Yes.
Because it was if my circumstances were anybody else's reality, I would have such compassion.
Yes.
I would be so empathetic and compassionate towards what they were going through, but I couldn't access that same level of compassion or empathy for myself. And it wasn't until I really leaned into that very scary question was this my fault? Was
Yeah.
this all my fault? And I knew that objectively people could argue, yes, you're responsible. You fell asleep. You shouldn't have fallen asleep. But the one truth that I come back to time and time again is my intention was to do the best I could that day for both of my boys.
Yeah.
I started off that morning giving my absolute best to Drew, giving him everything that I had, even though I was exhausted. I mean, this was day 3 of breathing treatments and being up for most of the night and, going full blast through, the day. And I was exhausted. But in my exhaustion, never was there this conscious thought of like, I don't care. Like, I'm too tired to worry about him. No, I made certain he had a breakfast. I made certain he had his crayons. I made certain he was enjoying the morning while I was, in my mind, still taking care of my other son. And I had to come to peace with the fact that I was a loving mother the day before this accident. I was a loving mother the day of the accident. And I have remained Drew's loving mother every day since that accident. That is the truth. And once I could reconcile that, and I sat with that really scary question, I came to understand that there are going to be a multitude of things, decisions that I make throughout my life that will have consequences that I will not know. There's no way to know what that rippling effect of every decision that I make the outcome will be. And in this particular circumstance, it was a devastating outcome, something that I can't go back and change, but it doesn't inherently make me at fault. It didn't inherently make me the cause or the reason that this happened. Drew was a vibrant child who loved life, and he was out there exploring this world the way he loved to explore the world. And he lived so purely and so vibrantly that that's what I choose to remember, is he was living life the way he was meant to, as a curious, enthusiastic, joyful little boy who just had so many curiosities. He had so many questions about the world. Why do trees grow this way? Why does grass need water? Just everything was a question. He just loved life and he loved nature. And that's, again, a touch point that I tried to emulate the way I live today through Drew's example, even though he was 4.5. I wake up every day and I think, what do I get to do today? What is out there in store for me today? It's not I have to do this or I got to do that. That's when life gets heavy. But when I approach life the way that Drew would approach life, and I live from that kind of expansive, curious viewpoint and in position in life, that's where I have found that service is important to me, and sharing my story is important to me. And Drew is definitely not gone. I talk about him. He's a part of my work. Now he's a part of the service and the contribution that I get to make as his mom. And without him, I wouldn't be this woman. And this woman is needed today for this specific time, for this specific reason, to share my story, to encourage others to embrace their healing journey, and to learn to let grief become a beautiful teacher and not a limitation.
Well, just to go back a bit too, I talk to a lot of women who are fresh in their grief, and so many feel that guilt. And what I find myself saying again and again and again is, you did the best that you could with what you knew at the time, right?
Absolutely.
And that's the
Absolutely.
thing. We make decisions, like you said, we can make decisions every day. We make the best decision we can with the information we have at the time. I mean, obviously, Had you known this was going to happen, you wouldn't have fallen asleep. But with the information you knew at the time, you were trying to make sure that your other son was continuing to breathe and wasn't having struggles. Drew was safely watching his movie with his crayons. There was no bit of information that would make you think that was a bad choice to go and rub his back, Devin's back, right? So that's what people need to, and I feel like I need to say this out loud because I need all of the listeners to say that to yourself again and again and again, and just to remind yourself, because it sounds like that's what you did. You had to remind yourself many times because the guilt, you have the guilt and you're like, okay, I'm going to let go of this. And then it just sneaks back. It sneaks back and gets you again. So it's not something that you can kind of get over once and you're good. No, it kind of creeps back and you have to remind yourself again and again.
Yeah. That's very true. And I think that grief has iterations. It has seasons, and it makes sense. There's the initial stages, which are really heavy and they're hard, and it's a lot of internal kind of questioning and dialogue, and then shifts, and then acceptance kind of starts to take shape. But what we do from that point forward is really pivotal, because I have found that there are some people who accept it, but then they stay kind of stuck. They stay kind of in this bubble of I'm not really allowed to have as much happiness as maybe I would have in the past. There's this like weird limiting kind of idea that if we move forward and we have joy and we are happy, that somehow this doesn't matter, or this wasn't as profound as people assume it should be. And I have found that I've had to struggle, like I've had to have that conversation with myself too about, it is right and it is good that I move forward in a healthy way, because that's where I can make the biggest contribution, which is my desire. I want my life to have meaning. I want my life to be reminiscent of all of the things that I hold dear, not only my values, my faith, but also my relationship with my son, who I haven't seen for 25 years, but that I know intimately and deeply. I know his presence every bit as much as if he were sitting right next to me. That is how much a part of my life today Drew is. He's not left in the past. He's the whole reason for my future. Like what I'm working toward is a direct result of the life that he lived and the example of the life that he left for me to remember him by, because it has absolutely given me the courage and this inner strength to face a lot of hard things, to sit with myself and those questions, that are terrifying to answer. But somehow, some way, I've managed to find a path that has been about service. It's about reaching back to people, to the woman I once was, and saying, let me sit with you for a moment, the way others have sat with me. Let me hold this space with you today, because I know how important it is to just need to have someone to be in this moment with you. I see people in a way that I know I couldn't without this experience. And so for that, I am immensely grateful. My son has given me access to parts of myself that I know would have remained unknown and hidden from me. And I know that there's a lot of grace that I've had to learn to have for myself. And I know God's had to learn to have a lot of grace for me along this journey, because my faith is definitely something that suffered initially. But just like with my relationship with Drew, my faith has been something that along this journey has really become my own. And I don't question it anymore. And I'm very, very aware of what my spiritual life means to me and how important that is when it comes to serving this group of individuals that are at their most vulnerable.
Mm-hmm. Well, talk about your work now. Talk about what you do.
Sure.
Yeah. I'd love to hear more about that.
I am the author of the book, Dear Drew, Creating a Life Bigger Than Grief, which is Drew's story and my journey towards healing after his loss. It is all of the best practices, all of the highs and the lows that I've taken and I put into one book as a hopefully an inspiration for others to lean into their journey with grief and learn from it and extract all of its goodness. And I know that that can sound hard for people, but there are some beautiful lessons that grief can reveal to us. Like I mentioned, compassion. And I don't know any person that I've ever met that has lost somebody. There is a presence that they carry. They are really with you when they are with you. Like there is a presence people hold.
Yeah.
And so learning to create that kind of presence and then understanding the value of moments, just the time we get to spend with people that we hold dear or we find fascinating or we're curious about, or even if we disagree with, the memories that we get to have and experience, that matters as we move forward. It matters not only for us, but for the people that we interact with, because that is what, at the end of this day or the days that I have on this life, I want my life to be filled with memories. I want my life to, and I want to leave a lot of memories for others to remember me by, because I know that is the gift that never stops giving, the gift of memory, the gift of those moments, the value of that presence that we can share with each other. That is what I know is so important and why I do the work that I do. So I write, I keep a blog, I write a weekly blog, I have a social media presence, but also I am a coach. I work with people that are looking to honor their loved one in a way that allows them to still move forward and not feel like they're being left behind, their loved one being left behind, or that they're missing out on truly living their own life.
Oh, that's just beautiful. That is beautiful. So how long have you been doing this work with coaching?
I started coaching about 7 years ago.
Okay. So quite a while now.
7 years ago. I started writing about 15 years ago. And so I'm 25 years along in this journey. My second book was just published August 19th of this year. So I have been busy. I will tell you, it took me 5 years to go from a manuscript to a book, the book that you see right here. This is the book, Dear Drew, Creating a Life Bigger Than Grief. It is it's my life's work, to be quite honest. It's all of the best practices. It's all of my hardest moments and the things that really were those kind of pivotal epiphanies or just a truth that I accessed or was able to align with in a very deeply meaningful way. And then I share what that experience was like in my book. And then I offer things that helped me, the practices that helped me really integrate a learning and make it something that I really embodied. Because there's a difference between knowing a thing and embodying a thing, right? And I really knew that the way forward for me, I was going to have to become very dedicated to my internal world and into my heart, give my heart the time and space it needed to be tended to and nurtured and loved and restored. And then my mind followed suit. But it really did start with me by learning to forgive and have grace for myself, answer that question of, was it my fault? And then understanding that I was a good mother the day before, the day of, and still to this day. And how I live my life is through service. I serve a community that I am a part of. I serve this community because I know how much grace we all need, especially on the healing journeys, because it's messy. Let's just be honest. It feels like we're in one place one day, and then we can feel like we're in a totally different place the next. And all of it is welcome. All of it is welcome in my experience. And that's really how I choose to work with people, is from a place of, let's not criticize. Let's get curious. Let's start investigating these feelings and these emotions, and let's see where they lead. Because I think that there's so many conversations that we need to have with people that are safe, with people that truly know what the experience is like. I found that for me, and this is just for me, that some of the deepest, I guess, leaps forward came from conversations from parents that had also lost a child.
Yeah.
It's just not comparable in my experience. I've had talented therapists. I've had beautiful, spiritual advisors and clergy that are always been a part of my journey. But for whatever reason, the words of the that have been spoken to me by parents who have lost a child reached me in a different way, and I just can't really pinpoint it, but it just landed differently. And so I knew that when I was ready, that is exactly what I wanted to do. I wanted to give back to the community that had given me access to the learning and the growth that I needed to become the woman that you see today.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think it's hard to maybe accept. I would say accept right away that you can be a better person after this, because right away, I certainly didn't want there to be anything good to come from Andy's death. Like, Andy's death is terrible. Andy's death is awful. Everything should be awful afterwards. But truly, I am a better person today. And it's hard to get to that point. And I think when you think about it, like, I am a better person because of Andy. I mean, because of loving Andy and continuing to love Andy and continuing to do this work and continuing to have amazing relationships with other bereaved parents. I mean, I am more compassionate. I am. And I know this is so hard for a lot of people to hear because they don't want that. But I hear that from you, from this entire interview that we've been talking now for 45 minutes about how you know that you are a better you than you were in some ways, right? I love how you said it unlocked something that was inside of you that you wouldn't have known that you had. I thought that was a beautiful way of putting it.
I know that's an undeniable truth.
Yeah.
I know that I am a different person because I actually see and experience the world differently now in a way that maybe I would not have chosen. Let's just be honest. I would not have said, "Hey, I'm gonna go ahead and volunteer for my son to be the one that passes away today, so that I can become this person." It's not that.
Yeah, I never would have done that. No.
What I'm saying is, even though this horrible tragedy touched my life, it is a point on my journey. My life continues. What that life looks like is my choice. It goes all the way back to that letter that I spoke of. And I cannot tell you how many times I've had to go back and read that letter because she didn't leave me a roadmap. She didn't tell me how to get there. She just told me that it would be possible, that joy and happiness were definitely still within my reach. I would just have to seek them. I would have to choose them. I would have to look for those things that bring smiles to my face when I think about Drew. And when I think about my journey, I used to walk around with Drew's it was like a Happy Meal sized Power Ranger, the red Power Ranger. It was one of his favorite. He loved the red Power Ranger. Devin could never be the red Power Ranger. So there was this little figurine that Drew would always have in his pocket or his backpack. And I couldn't find it for the longest time. And I did one day. It was in his toy box. Which was odd because, he just never set this little figurine down. I had carried that Power Ranger with me for years. For years. It was in my purse or in my pocket on hard days or, on holidays. Instead of an elf on the shelf, there was a Power Ranger, on the shelf. And it was just my way of keeping Drew with me in the moments as I struggled to move forward. I found comfort in things like that. And rather than criticize or let people say, "Oh, you're kind of losing it," I would just say, this is how I honor this is how I'm choosing to honor Drew. This is how it makes me feel connected to him. And I stopped waiting for people to get it. Like, not everyone is going to understand your process. Not everybody's going to agree. I went to drumming circles in Utah. I went to chronic healing practitioners in India. I stretched. When I say I endeavored to really extract all the learning I could from grief, I really did. I did Reiki. I did somatic practices. I did journaling. I did traditional therapy. I did alternative therapy. I did the healer's blueprint and studied, the subconscious mind, and just really dove into this whole world of what it means to heal mind, body, and spirit, and picked what worked for me. I love sound baths. Sound baths are wonderful. Not everybody gets that. Not everybody wants to do that with me, but I honor what works for me, and I've owned that my healing journey is mine. It's unique, just like me and just like Drew. And so I just allow for this experience to lead me wherever I need to go. 25 years later, I'm still
Yeah.
doing things that honor my own healing journey. They look differently than they did 25 years ago, but my dedication to this practice has never stopped. I really believe that we have to advocate for ourselves, and especially when we have lost children, and there's
Yeah.
just nothing that I can even begin to compare it to. It is just it's unimaginable. It just splits your life in to this before and after, and I don't really know how else to say it, but the after doesn't have to be terrible.
Mm-hmm.
The after can still be beautiful. And you're right. I really do believe that. It really is the whole thesis of not only my life's work, but my belief system. I still believe that there is so much beauty that this life has to offer me, that I come ready to experience that beauty every single day. But I have to choose that. And if I don't, then that's on me, because the opportunity and the choice is always there. It's just, what are we willing to do? Are we willing to sit with pain? Are we willing to learn? Post traumatic growth is still growth, and there is still wisdom to be extracted, but we can't do that in avoidance. We can only do that through the active kind of dance that we have with grief.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's beautiful. And I do want to say we have to touch on the Christmas, because I told listeners that we would talk about Christmas.
Sure.
And then, the rest of the conversation has just been so rich that I have neglected to talk about that. But I know that was kind of in your plan a little bit. We wanted to talk about kind of the approach to Christmas and the holidays. So yeah, please offer some insight on that.
Sure. So one of the things that I always like to encourage is, so if you're somebody who knows somebody that is grieving this holiday, I get asked the question, what should I do? What should I say? I always say that presence over platitude is the way to go. You don't have to have something to say, but the best thing that you can do is be present. Just be with, and then allow for that person to guide you. You can even say, I'm not sure what to do in this moment, but it's important for me to be here with you. What can I do? Or what do you need? And sometimes they'll say nothing. Just be with me. Sometimes it's pretty obvious when there's dirty dishes in the sink, when there's trash that needs to be taken out. Little acts of service are very helpful to a person who feels overwhelmed by the holidays or overwhelmed by the grief and the holidays. So just being present and observant, and then always ask, but just ask if this is something that you can do to help support them. And then for the person who is grieving this holiday season, I know how unbearable it is to know that there is an empty seat at the table, or there is somebody missing that you want so desperately to be with you this holiday. One of the most helpful things that I have found is remembering that all of the memories that I hold dear. And I started asking for other people's memories of Drew. Rather than a gift, I would say, I would mail a note card and say, I would love this year for you to share with me one memory that you have of Drew. And I would get these letters back, or these note cards back. Sometimes they would be mailed. Sometimes they were brought, as we were gathering for Thanksgiving or Christmas. But the gift of shared memory is so special, and it's something that you can, accumulate over time, and then going back year over year and looking at what you were grateful for, what you remember, but what other people remember about Drew has brought such a beautiful, it's flipped. It's not this dread. It's this grateful anticipation now. I get to gratefully anticipate this beautiful gift of a new memory that someone is going to share with me. And that's how I choose to look at the holidays, as this beautiful opportunity to share a memory about someone that I hold in my heart so closely. Even though he's not living, he's still not gone either, and I get to re-experience that love through the lens of somebody else's memory. And I love that so much. And it makes the holidays feel less heavy and more
Yes.
hope-filled. And that's the part that I want people to understand. You can find hope even in grief during the holidays, but approach is everything. Sometimes it's do what feels right, that honors you and where you're at, but also endeavor to try. You got to try things on in order to know if something's going to fit. So maybe if the gift of memory feels like too much, maybe it's you make their favorite cookies. Maybe and then you donate them, or maybe you gather children's books or something and you make a donation in their memory. I do things like that, and it just really helps to take the sting out of the holidays and create that space where hope and the gift of his memory are more at the forefront.
Oh, that's just beautiful. I love that memory idea. I'm going to take that one on
It's a
and
great
ask
one.
people. Because it is, you're 100% right. We just dread it, but that is putting a beautiful spin on things. I just love, love, love everything you had to say there. So thank you so much for that gift, Melissa.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome. And I hope that your listeners, just begin. I know
Yeah.
that it can feel overwhelming to just begin, but just begin. Just start. Asking for a gift of memory it costs nothing, and people are always so enthusiastic to share, because sometimes they don't know if it's okay to share these memories. And I think when we invite them, we create more of a gathering kind of place where our memories and our emotions are all welcome, because there is something, as bittersweet, or sweet bitter as I like to refer to it. It's the sweet bitter, but it is still sweet. And that memory that on that note card is something that I get to reread year after year, and you keep adding to it. And so now 25 years later, I have so many of my memories and other people's memories. And Drew doesn't feel like he's not a part of the holidays. It feels like he's right there with us in a really beautiful and meaningful way. So I hope that if they take anything from this conversation and about how to approach the holidays, give yourself grace, allow yourself to honor the love that still remains, lean into this very wild dance of grief, but let it be beautiful, and make the decision that it can be, because that is really it is true. It can life after loss can still be a wonderful life. And I know that can be hard to hear, especially in the earlier stages, but I want to hold that space for that person who's in the storm and be the lighthouse, and just remind you that you too can find the shore, and you too can live a life that's vibrant and meaningful. You can. I'm not the only one who's done this. I'm just one of many who are choosing to step forward and be a voice, and hopefully start a lot of conversations that bring a lot of people closer to their own healing journey, and this idea that all is not lost, that the love still remains, and that is in and of itself quite a beautiful gift.
Well, thank you so much for sharing with us today, for sharing Drew, and for sharing all of your 25 years of wisdom.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for listening. If you found this helpful and would like to support the podcast, please leave a 5-star rating and comment. To help financially, you can type Andy's Mom, one word, to the number 53555. This provides a link to GiveButter, which allows donations through PayPal, Venmo, Apple Pay, or credit cards. GiveButter will provide a receipt of your tax-deductible donation. Or you can visit the donation page at andysmom.com/donate. Always Andy's Mom is a registered 501c3 and can receive donations through Thrivent Financial and Benevity. Marcy loves hearing from listeners. Please feel free to reach out to her via email at marcy@andysmom.com or on the Instagram or Facebook Always Andy's Mom accounts. Sign up for the email list to get weekly episode links as well as pictures of Marcy's guests and their children. Together, let's work to inspire hope, one day at a time.